All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Modern Mind interview series where we work with real people to help understand how they work to be and do their best every single day using mental fitness. And today we're really excited to have Zoltan Mesko here, who is an incredible professional, ex-NFL player, father, who is working on his mind as best as he can on a regular basis and is going to tell us a little bit more about his story today. So with that, Zoltan, or as I like to call you, Zoli, take it away. Tell us about yourself.
Lizzie, thank you for having me. A little bit about myself. So yeah, Zoltan. I currently live in the city that always sleeps. It's Cleveland, Ohio. Not where you are, where they never sleep, but I miss that place once in a while. But a little bit about myself. So I got to Michigan through a football scholarship, and that took me to the NFL for a handful of years. But even before, I moved to the States when I was 11, so I'm fresh off the boat from Romania. I was 11 years old when I came over. I lived through some communist era, some post-communist era. I've been through hyperinflation and all those beautiful economic trends that people fear or may have never feared, but I'm happy to give you examples. But anyways, I'm kind of living the American dream now, where the land of opportunity has given me a lot to live for. And football also changed my life because I used to play soccer back in Europe. That was my religion, so to speak, and kind of transferred over to kicking the oblong ball. And now I find myself in the tech sales world, which is obviously booming these days.
Amazing. And tell us, so that's obviously a little bit about your trajectory, but outside of work, what takes up your time?
Outside of work is that's a great question. I have three young kids, 8, 4, and 1 currently. There's controlled chaos, as I like to call it.
How much is controlled and how much is chaos?
Yeah, it's yin and yang. So sometimes it's like, funny enough, as soon as the chaos goes away, you kind of want it back a little bit. And I'm sure I'll want it back even more so when they leave off to college, or at least the last one will. But yeah,
Yeah.
I don't think the problems of parenthood are you give up some happiness for a lot of meaning in my opinion. And I think that comes more and more to fruition as I get older.
Amazing. And I'm curious, can you talk a little bit about what it was like, I guess, during these transitions in your life?
Yeah, so the transitions, of course, are always hard. I think the hard part of starting something new is that you're excited for the new thing, but you never really know what type of friction you'll be involved in, and you know it's coming. But I think as humans, we're blind by nature to try new things and survive and all that stuff. But yeah, going into kind of moving overseas to America, quite the culture shock, but I adapted pretty well as a youngster, and English was actually my fourth language learned. So I've
Whoa.
thought, and dreamt in all those four languages. So Romanian, I should say Hungarian
And what,
first, Romanian second, German third, and then fourth was English. I also picked up Spanish because it's very close to Romanian, but of course through non-practice
whoa.
that went away. So at one point I was fluent, but going back to the transition side, yeah, it's always difficult. Even I think going from high school to college, and I'm sure everyone experiences it, kind of untethering from the family always has its big changes. And then maybe going away from college, going into the professional football or the NFL, it has its changes as well, where you take away the aspect of being a student, which I heavily relied upon, kind of distracting me from any type of bad practice or game. That was quintessential in the distraction game. And then you find yourself that all you're thinking about is football, and that's your profession. And that's when you got to start finding different ways of occupying your mind. And then, of course, the big transition was actually going from football over to the corporate world. Uh, I tend to be maybe a slower learner than most. And then I find my own ways that are not so much viewed as like vanilla, but I usually excel after the slower learning curve.
Amazing. And I'm curious, when you were in the NFL, like what were other things that you did to busy your mind, take your mind off of, difficult practices, games?
The first thing that pops into my mind for how to distract myself is at Michigan, I started this trend. So every Thursday night, we would go visit the kids at the Children's Hospital at Michigan, and I continued the trend in New England. I went to the Boston's Children's Hospital and Providence Hospital. Right away, you start realizing the relativity of your problems and how they melt away. Because the first time I've ever been at a bedside of a 5-year-old who's getting chemotherapy pumped through their veins or their body, it just kind of melts away. How dare you think of your problems as actual problems? It's all in relative terms.
Yep. Wow. Okay. So perspective is big there, which is super powerful. Well, we'll talk a little bit about that later. I'm curious, when you ended up transitioning then into the tech world, it sounds like that was like a big transition for you. Was there like a moment or a particularly difficult day or conversation or something that stands out during that time? Because I'm smiling. I thought it would be more difficult to move into the NFL, but it sounds like that was a bigger change.
Yeah, I think so. The NFL is very accountable and very transparent because on a week-to-week basis, if you're going to have 2 weeks in a row of bad performance, you're pretty much on the chopping block. So coming into the sales world at the corporate level, right, in tech, having a quota is not that actually difficult for me to comprehend because you have a year to prove yourself, or even a second year after a bad performance year. Somehow I've always excelled at. And I can tell why, because I've always been kind of a little bit too on edge from things, maybe to my detriment now. And that also played into coming into the corporate world and working for, the quintessential megacorp, where the first company I joined, it was IBM, 400,000 people. Sometimes I would jump onto my couch and yell into the pillow, why can't someone respond to an email? So I think that was the biggest transition of like the lack of accountability. Like, hey, I'm making up a name. Hey, Bobby, like, can we please get this done? This is the 8th time I've had to remind you about it. So that doesn't work in the sports world.
That's really interesting. It's like there's this high pressure environment, but everybody understands the rules and plays by the rules. Otherwise, they have to leave. Whereas at work, you didn't find the same thing.
No, I was just going to say the ever so often cliche quote now, like the tape doesn't lie, right? So the whole room's looking at you. Like if you missed that block or you missed that pass, like, come on, we need you. Or, the component of the engine gets replaced at the professional level.
Super interesting. I love that. And by the way, it is a great transition into kind of mental fitness as a topic, because you were talking about, screaming into the pillow, which is a great mental fitness practice to do. But for those who don't know, at Mind You, we describe mental fitness as the practice of these different research-backed exercises that help you work on your mind to build focus, resilience, and high performance. Or in other words, like really deal with stress, exhaustion, burnout, which are what we call mental wellness challenges. And so I'm curious, can you talk a little bit about your mental fitness journey through these different periods of your life? Because it sounds like mental fitness probably showed up very differently for you.
Great. That's a great point. And I don't think I was aware enough to even realize any mental fitness requirements or any type of adjustments up until I got involved. Maybe later high school years, maybe definitely at the college level. So I don't think it was needed until college. And then of course, organically by sheer force, I mean, because there was required workouts and practices, there was a lot of the mental game that was taken care of from the physical side. Not we did have access to sports psychologists and everything, but a lot of your problems can be solved with proper sleep, nutrition, and exercise. It's my quintessential question to any physician. I was like, do you think like 90% of your business would die off if we ate properly, slept well, and controlled our BMI and, whatever, pump some oxygen through our brain once in a while? And they're like, absolutely.
And I want to talk to you about a bad day on the field, like whatever that looked like. And what did you do? Was it more exercise? Was it, eating an apple instead of Cheetos, like at a young age? Like, what was happening then?
I was fairly resilient as a kid, maybe growing up through communism, and I just didn't know it, right? That was life back then. And, I didn't have everything provided to me. Of course, that switched up a little bit once my parents, both engineers, came over. They could afford a little more. But for me, I'm very, very much, the lows are very low. So I think losing sucks for me. That's for sure. And I think maybe I became good at sports because I was trying to avoid the suck part, right? It's just,
And
It's I enjoy winning and the praise and all that stuff, but I think more so pain avoidance and perfectionism is what got me to where I am, and maybe it's a blessing and a curse, however you look at it. That's why you have to manage the mental game.
now you're a kicker. I want you to pretend it's game day. What happens? We make the shot. How are we feeling? We miss the shot. Like, what are you doing on the spot? I'm assuming it's
Yeah,
not jumping jack to kind of like get to focus.
so the focus, a lot of the preparation absolutely dulled away any type of anxiety because then confidence ensues if you're well prepared.
Yeah.
There's also the fine line to cross and stay in within the gray area of I need this anxiety or this adrenaline, whatever it may be, and leverage it in my favor, right? That's part of the deal. The other thing I just figured this out. I like to get out there and do my own little drills, and usually it was that early where, let's say at Michigan, there was a capacity of 108,000 in the stadium. And if you walk out with the whole stadium like rocking and rolling and sold out, that's just bad. So you have to show up early into the stadium and see little Johnny and his daddy sitting first into the seat. So that usually happens like a couple hours before kickoff. And then you just multiply it that way. It's kind of like the old cliche term of like, just picture everyone naked, or that person poops and that person poops and we're all imperfect. So then you just multiply it then, but that usually alleviated a lot of my stress. But I will say on a pie chart, predominantly the stress or anxiety was eliminated by knowing that I had prepared and I was ready to go.
I love it. And the preparation for you, like, what was that like? And then we're going to talk about how this has kind of transitioned to your role as both a professional, also then as a dad, because I want to talk about that too. That takes a lot of mental fitness, I've heard. So what does preparation look like? What did it look like for you?
Well, for me, I guess it was very much trying to make everything repeatable and routine so that I had the freedom to do what I needed if it was an extra stretch or was feeling tight that day. But it was all routine based. We would even joke around like I got interviewed for this specific question, like, do you have any like uh, rituals or any what do you call it? And my college roommate was like, you should tell him that I have my roommate pour 3 cups of red Gatorade over my head and 2 cups of green Gatorade, and that's my routine for the game. But it is that superstitious sometimes where I think it gets you in the zone, right? It's kind of like the Pavlov's dog bell ringing. It's like obviously there was never Gatorade poured over anything, but it's just you tie your shoelaces the same, you put on your underwear the same way, and sometimes the same underwear. And sometimes people don't wash those underwear. But anyways, I'm getting ahead of myself.
I love it. Um, that's so good. And I'm curious, okay, so if it wasn't 3 cups of red Gatorade and 2 cups of green, which is so good, was there anything, do you remember, that you did back then before a game or at practice that really like got you set? Because there's a lot of research here that shows that these routines are meaningful.
Yeah, I mean, you should see the itinerary board it's a whiteboard that pretty much every team has, and it's down to the minute of like, hey, this group of players now get ready, this group of players now go on the field. We're going to literally field punts for 3 minutes, and then you will go down to this yard line, and then you will do this. I mean, it is so well thought out. And of course, not everyone would win, so you feel like, obviously, on average, 50% of the time, 50% of the teams, there's a winner and a loser, but you have to do it to even try to compete.
Amazing. Now, moving into working at these top companies, I'm curious, like, did you have any routines that you had established that would kind of start to help you get prepared to build that confidence, even when, things felt out of your control, people weren't responding, that kind of thing?
Yeah, I'm usually, after working at these tech companies and I have to herd a lot of cats, I think just preparation in general, being proactive and not just showing up, that would bother me. I don't think my persona ever would allow me that. I'm sure I've slipped up before and I came to a meeting unprepared, which definitely has happened, but the vast, vast majority of the time, the following meeting has been overcorrected because of that pain that I endured, right?
Absolutely. And I'm curious, do you have a daily routine or any routines that you hold today to kind of keep you set in your mind and
Yeah,
body?
the routine kind of is set by the kids these days. So I wish I could tell you that I wake up at 4:57 a.m., chug a glass of water, do my 14 jumping jacks, and go for a walk to get my blue light through my retinas. But it's very much set by the kids, and usually I'm up with my 1 year old and getting all the chocolate milks ready for the three kids. And then really the routine for me, the non-chaotic side happens when I get into this office. And I try to actually um, hop on my treadmill, which you can see right behind me there. By the way, everyone should probably invest in one if you have the space. These things fold up so that you can like prop it up against the wall if you don't have kids. But they're like $200,
Cool.
like on Amazon these days. So it's been like studies have
Amazing.
shown that yes, get out into nature, go email on your phone if you must. But the second best thing is like walking on a treadmill to like prompt a little creativity and for the day. I will say many times I try to knock out the most creative work possible that I need to maybe adjust some slides here and there. Try not to get into email right away because that takes you down a rabbit hole of answering stuff. But by the way, one thing that I've stumbled upon lately, if you have a MacBook, it's on key 5 up here. I'm looking at it right now. It's a microphone button, or there's a microphone button on your phone. Speech to text has changed the game for me as far as like productivity. I think I get like 2.5 times more email done, and the friction or the gravity to get going on anything is highly alleviated. So that's kind of a side comment there, but highly recommend trying out
Love
the
it.
speech to text because you can do real time edits with your keyboard if you must, but it does the punctuations for you. It's amazing.
That's great. We love productivity. Honestly, it's a part of mental fitness. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about a hard day for you. So, what does a hard day look like? And then, what? How do you deal with it at this point?
Yeah.
Knowing that I'm sure hard days have to do with chaos and preparation is less a part of that.
Yeah, so I think the ups and downs are more a little more frequent. If it was a stock ticker, I'm a little bit more up and down more frequently, and I see the rise because a lot of it is dictated. A lot of the either cortisol release or dopamine release for happiness or whatnot. It's about deals either getting lost or deals getting won, and there's a lot more of them now that I see oversee a bigger team. But at the same time, before when I was seeing less of a cycle of deals, it would hit me hard. But you do have to put it into perspective that when it is a bad day, so to speak, because that is your motivation or kind of clinging onto your job, your livelihood, and I'm a kind of a sole provider to the family. It does hit me hard, but I have to also put it into perspective. And I don't think there's not many things that a good night's rest doesn't fix. That's for sure. But all in all, I do like to hit it hard when reviewing, like, hey, what actually happened, and then adjusting from there.
So, learning, making sure you get that sleep, even as a parent, that matters, which I hear.
It's huge.
Um,
It's huge. Yeah, it's
I'm curious, like when your kids were much younger, what were you doing when you were super tired? Like, how did you deal with that?
I will say our oldest had the most trouble getting to sleep on a routine basis. Second one was kind of a breeze. Third one was pretty good too. But by then you kind of figure it out. Everyone's like, oh, the second's pretty easy. And you start micromanaging less and less. But yeah, I think you ask any of my college friends or even roommates, they're like, dude, Zoltan needed to get his 8 hours of sleep or he was cranky. I think I've evolved out of that.
Yes.
Because no longer do I need my physical performance to be in tip top shape, but I know it also correlates with mental aptitude and all that stuff and performance. Um, so yeah, I think sleep is huge, but I will say sometimes I'm a hypocrite. Like, especially with kids, like sometimes your only free time is after they go to bed, hopefully around 8:30 before 9. And then it's like, well, should I get to bed too? Like at 10? Why don't I stretch it to 11? And then I'm getting kind of suboptimal sleep. But yeah, you kind of navigate the world. The good thing about all this is that you spinning up this podcast, the good thing about it is that like we're all relatable. Like I don't think anyone's got their shit together, period. but we try to stay on the path, kind of like, listen,
Yeah, I
as
love
long
that.
as you have a checks and balances of like, oh, kind of drifted off into the woods, get back on the path, right? I don't think we'll ever get to this juncture in life where it's like, oh, it's a prairie with flowers and everything. No, it's like, it's always going to be a struggle. So get used to it, right? Like, we're always going to have
Yeah,
waste. We're literally like, it's not all profit.
I
There's
love
cost
that.
to the revenue.
I've actually never heard that before. It's not all profits, it's costs. And I think that's very right. I mean, it's like the ups and downs. When we were chatting at one point, you had told me that there was something that you do a lot to kind of like check your mental state when there's something going on. And I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about it and maybe even teach us how it works, because I'm always looking for really interesting ways to help people practice mental fitness. And I personally am obviously always looking for new things to help me think a little differently.
Yeah. Well, the language that has always followed me, I mentioned English is my fourth language, has been math. So probability is obviously right in the math wheelhouse. And I just love, and this is why, funny enough, I've fallen in love with the insurance industry. It's because it's just betting with numbers, right? With big data. And the kind of, I stumbled into CBT or cognitive behavioral therapy right after COVID kicked off because I was like, hey, if I'm exercising my muscles, and this stuff is free through my work, why not take advantage of it and go talk to a mental coach here or a therapist, whatever you want to call it, and kind of introduce to this evidence-based, like, why do you think that? Right? Because I was thinking to myself, I'm afraid I'm going to get fired for not selling enough software. I'm going to wind up on the side of the road or like in a bus stop sleeping. And this person was like, hold on, walk me through it. How do you get to the bus stop? Well, I would really, really have to be bad at this and like never reply to any email and then like really like do some weird shit like to like run out of my cash.
Yeah.
And then I get to the bus stop. So it's like, oh my God, there's something here with CBT as far as like walk me through it. What's the evidence? And of course, the numbers, I've set up plenty of spreadsheets of like, all right, what's the probability of that happening? Well, it's only 10%. What about that one as a chain, right? That's 7% maybe. Let's be conservative. All right. And then it adds up to like 0.0001% that would ever happen. So I kind of love numbers. And then I thought about it because I also love money because it pays for the bills. And I like to, keep building a nest egg. And rightfully so, because I came from a hyperinflationary society in Romania. I saw my parents get paid in cash as their paycheck and then spend half of it at the farmer's market to put food on our table. But that's why I value money so much. So it's kind of a PTSD psychological thing. So anyways, back to the bets. The primary example I think I used it on was we were leaving the house and I was just like, oh shit, did we leave the oven on? I don't know. Well, what's the probability of you having left the oven on? Because you would have had to turn the knob and like you would have heard it cranking still. It's like, oh, it's probably like 0.01%. Well, can you take $100 bet? It's like, okay, then the expected value of that like actually happening is like, I'll pay you a penny. But if you're wrong, like you gotta pay up the money somewhere, right? Like a friend of mine was watching some media all day, every day, and they were thinking like all the shelves in the grocery stores are going to be like bare because we have a diesel shortage and like dude you better start stocking up. This was in 2022 or early 2022 and I was like I'm pretty sure we have that down by now, and they're like no dude, these people were like experts, and I'm like I'll put $100 bet that in 6 months it doesn't come true. So that person was like, well, no, I'm not going to take that bet. Well, it's like, if you're not going to put money on it, then it's not real. Like you truly don't believe in it. Even though in your anxious mind, you're like, this is the end of the world. I will die. So that's kind of
Absolutely. To your point, it's like there's the rational and the irrational that pops into our mind. Not all of our thoughts are true. Spoiler alert, everyone. And so to your point, you use cash, which is like important to you, something you value and think about a lot, to help really challenge your thinking, to say, how true do I think this is? Would I put money on it?
Yeah, absolutely. And some people, majority of the people, let's say cash works, or maybe it's an embarrassment moment or something like that. But I like to quantify it through cash and maybe expected value and all that stuff. A big kind of moment for me in this mental game was the actual realization or the learning about how the mind works and how there's an amygdala where you kind of want to stay out of it unless you're like fleeing or fighting someone. But there's also the prefrontal cortex where you want to hang out for most of the time and be analytical minded and have good executive decision making skills happening, which for me can happen a lot. Getting out of my mind is, doing an exercise, because if I drop the weight, I'm going to get hurt. So pay attention. Or woodworking. I like woodworking. Like, pay attention to that table saw because you're going to get your finger ripped off. Right. But it's definitely keeping my attention and keeping me in a state of flow.
I love what you were saying before about this idea of kind of like moving from your amygdala, your fight or flight response, into your prefrontal cortex where your executive thinking happens. And so the bets help you do that. These things help you do that, really like move quite quickly and sort of in a way almost like create a game out of them. How do you catch yourself in those moments?
How do I catch myself? Sometimes when it's like too late and I'm feeling like crap. But at least I'm paying attention to it and it's not the end of the world. Because I know I've seen the cycle many, many times where it's like, I can fix this, right? I have the golf clubs, the different shots in the bag that I can take. So I've even made a list of like, well, did you sleep properly? Did you avoid like crazy processed sugar in the morning? I will crush pancakes with the kids because I make them on the weekend, but if I do that in the weekday, like, forget about it. I'm going to be useless in a meeting, right? But things like journaling or exercise and taking a walk or doing some gardening, something, just kind of breaking it up. And of course, scheduling it in. How many times have you scheduled in like tasks and then you're like, oh, let me move that around. Like, I can blow it off. But it's easier when you have someone to disappoint. It's easier to execute.
Absolutely. I'm curious, you've obviously, been to therapy, you've had access to coaching in various ways for both your mind and your body. You talk about preparation, all these things. Who do you listen to? What are you reading? Like, what are your top, let's say, one or two favorite people or books or resources or something like that helped you better understand your mind?
Yeah, great question. I think it started with like in the podcast world. He was an earlier podcaster, is Tim Ferriss. And then I think everyone's partaking in the mental game side of it now, especially like with all the Instagram posts, if you're following, the algorithm gets you, or on YouTube or whatever your social platform of choice is. Hopefully the algorithm doesn't take you too far away. Now, with all this said, funny enough, and there's no thumping of any type of religion here, but all these self-help books, and I started self-help books like in high school because I was like, oh, what's this like Move My Cheese or 7 Habits of Highly Effective People stuff. I'm like, you open up the Bible or whatever you prescribe to, and kind of the best practices are like written down. So it's funny enough, you can get back to those bestsellers, all-time bestsellers, whatever it would be, the Torah or whatever. And it's like, dude, this is all in here. Every self-help book could be adapted. I bet you could prompt ChatGPT to be like, write me a self-help book based on this chapter or this book written in here. But anyways, that's for a certain limited audience. I think a lot of the answers lie there, or you can get your answers from what's that lady called who talks about the 5-second rule? She's pretty good too.
Mel Robbins. Is that right?
Yeah, that's her. She's pretty good at it.
Yeah, she's great. I love it. And by the way, I agree with you. I always say that like in many ways, like the self-help space, religion, neuroscience, psychology, Eastern medicine, like a lot of this is talking about similar topics in different languages. I loved when you talked about math as a different language too. It's like we all need to hear things in different ways at different times. So I think that's great. And yeah, Mel Robbins is quite funny. Super cool. All right, I have a rapid fire 3 questions. You ready?
I will try my best.
Amazing. You're crushing. This is so fun. Seriously, you should have your own podcast. I'm like in it. There's like 12 different routes I could go, but here, let's let her rip. Okay. So if you were to give someone advice who's listening to this and heard 1 or 2 things and they're like, it's interesting. Maybe I should be working on my mental fitness. What advice would you give them to get started?
Advice to get started. It's so contextualized too. I heard there's a pretty good platform being built, by the way, for this very, very stuff. Yeah, for me, so you could technically build ChatGPT into your own cognitive behavioral therapist, right? And it's really like, okay, so maybe you don't even need a therapist, but journaling is so big. And now I actually even alleviate the friction of actually having to write or type is use that microphone button on your phone, where now you have the audible sensory, so you're hearing yourself speak and you're seeing the text populate on the page. It's so powerful. And I almost equate it back to Abraham Lincoln. Like, this guy used to cuss out his generals on paper. Like, how dare you get outflanked, you idiot. I told you to do this. We lost the battle. You're an idiot. I never want to talk to you again. You are relieved of your duties. And he wrote those letters and he stashed them in his desk. And we only found those letters that were never sent out to those generals after the fact. And then, you write it out and you get it out and you're allowed to motherfuck the page all you want. It helps. I think journaling is a great start. Even if especially a lot of people take care of journaling through talking to their friends, but it has to be a trusted friend. And paper kind of never judges.
I love that. There's so many good isms there. You're right. Paper doesn't judge. I always joke if someone opened my journal, they'd be like actively concerned about me, because that's where I go to vent, like you can't hurt a piece of paper, so you can say whatever you want.
Yeah. But the title of my journal has nothing to do with journaling in my Google Docs, because if I pass away, I don't want anyone to find that thing. It's got a lot of stupid thoughts.
That's how I feel too. I'm like, this is not, when I write, I think it's also interesting when I started writing, for me, I don't even call it journaling. I'm just like, I need to write this stuff down, right? It's like when I started writing, I was noticing myself coming to the page, trying to tell a story about how I was feeling. And now, to your point, sometimes I just smash the keys when I'm really pissed. But I love the idea of also titling that something you don't want people to find.
You know what's funny too? That you and I are on the same page with oh, I hope no one sees this thing. No one gives a shit. I honestly, if I stumbled upon a friend's 290 page document, I would scan it, but I'm not oh, let me find out, why this happened. That's totally. Just our minds.
I love that. It is our minds. I think it's called the spotlight effect. We think that we're in the spotlight for everybody in their lives, and we're really usually just a side character or an extra in most other people's lives. So very true.
Yeah.
Okay. Next question. You ready?
Got it.
Amazing. Okay. Best piece of life advice you've ever received?
Best piece of life advice. The first thing, probably not the best, but it's the first thing that pops into my mind. So I'll couple it with being the best because it just rings true in my mind. My high school football coach always talked about hard work paying off. And sometimes I work too hard, not so smart. But I don't think I'll ever be the gazelle if I work hard. I try to work smarter. I will not get caught by the lion if I put in too much work. Or if it's my personal life, or my kids, being a father, whatever it is. It may not be the most optimized, but yeah, I try to do something every waking moment of my life, I guess.
Do you ever take breaks?
No, that's my problem. I try.
Now we've got something for you, right? The moments of peace and quiet. I am curious, if you'll never get eaten by the lion because you're always doing something, what are you running towards? What's on the other end of that?
That's a great question. So I think this, I'll go into my fallacy of every year I sit down around New Year. Sometimes it skips into January 3rd, 2nd, or 2nd, 3rd, and I write down my goals for the year. And I think sometimes those, goals for the year, they can be a little bit short-sighted. But funny enough, I never revisit those. But when I visit those at the end of the year, lo and behold, it was all in my subconscious and most of the stuff got done. Now, what doesn't get really put on paper is my real vision, dreams for my life. And that's so ebbs and flows, which I don't ever want to cement. But I think people need to be open to the fact, myself included, that just because you write it down doesn't mean it's permanent. It can always change. And think back on your life 10 years ago, how much you've changed, by a magnitude. There's no way. You think you haven't changed, but we're all the frog in that pot that never moves from the boiling water in a positive way, hopefully. Right?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Hopefully that answers the question. I think I deviated a little bit.
No, it totally answers the question. Now I can't help it. What are your hopes and dreams on a big level? I'm not going to ask you about your yearly goals because you're crushing them as we speak. And I feel like a lot of us could probably guess some of them based on what you've shared. But do you
Yeah,
have those things like in the back of your mind?
I will say it's very very high level, which doesn't define like what work I want to do, but um, it's a little bit of so one thing I'm really, really afraid of is working too hard and having my kids suffer because of it in the way of their development, right?
Well, that's big. That's really big. Okay. Closing thoughts. This is a commercial. You're trying to get people to like think about some of this mindset stuff. What are you saying? And if it's easier to think about, like, what would you tell your kids about their mental fitness?
We think we have got it once our life is in order, but I think we all need a maintenance and more so than maintenance, like we all need to strive for more. And again, just chip away, right? It's going to be like the stock market. There's going to be ups and downs, but at the end of the day, the long-term return of the S&P 500 is around 10% per year. And if you go a decade, your principal doubles. And hopefully this is how, I think it goes back, I'll connect it back to the struggle. Like there will never be a time where you think, I have made X amount or I've made this amount, and now I'm going to enjoy Mai Tais on the beach on the island because now I can retire. Like the problems will never stop, and within 2 weeks, like go enjoy as many margaritas as you want. Like your mind's going to find problems to solve again. So I think just, and I'm speaking to myself as well, don't ever think you'll arrive,
Of course.
but take breaks along the way. There's, rest areas on the highways for a reason.
Love it. So good. And that's going to be part of, I'm going to get you to shove that into your yearly goals. More breaks for Zoltan, wherever you can find him. A minute counts. That's what we always say here.
I like it. A minute counts. Yep. I think part of that is breaking big goals into small little doable tasks. I do the dishes every night, and part of that gravity, I like listening to podcasts while doing dishes on my AirPods. But sometimes I'm done with podcasts as far as like I don't want to listen to another optimization podcast. But I'm like, there's like probably I'm estimating like 30, 40 minutes of dishes here because like this was a big meal that we cooked. And I'm like, well, just spend like 10 minutes, like put it on your watch right now. Put 10 minutes or 5 minutes on your watch. And there's only positive things that can happen. Tomorrow you wake up and you're already 5 minutes into it. You've just teleported 5 minutes into it. That's one. The other one is that you actually get done in 5 minutes. And funny enough, one time I set the timer for like 10 minutes and I'm like, I've developed so much momentum. I only have a couple more to go. I got done in 12 minutes. So second positive. And then
Nice.
the other one is you completely overestimate the project and you get it done. It's kind of like the advice I saw on Reddit one time. It's like, if you're ever like depressed, like start cleaning your room. Even if you're in a shitty mood right after, at least you're in a shitty mood with a clean ass room,
That's it.
you know?
It's so true. I love that so much. That's what I do. I'll organize my desktop, get everything in order, clean up my notebook, my to-do list, whatever.
Yeah.
It's big.
And there's studies where like if you have
So good.
if you have a cluttered desk, and I know I can't speak to Einstein because or whoever, they like that cluttered desk. And my work bench in my garage, my workshop, it is a little bit messy, but I know where everything is. But subconsciously, your mind is
Love
trying to
it.
make sense of everything, and it's slowly dripping cortisol in you. So just having a clean environment helps.
Absolutely. And there's a lot of research there too, which is so beautiful. I feel like there's so many things you touched on here today. You are such a delight, so many laughs, also so many, honestly, really practical ways to think about mental fitness, from preparation to routines, thinking about just being a freaking human and giving yourself a break, taking the first small step anytime you want to work on something, to making small bets with yourself. There's so much here. So Zoltan, thank you so much for spending time with us to talk a little bit more about your life, how you think about mental fitness, and small ways and big ways, honestly, that you practice this on a regular basis. Where can people find you if they want to learn more, chit chat, just hear some more of your wisdom?
Yeah, I was gonna say I'm pretty active these days, or pretty responsive today on LinkedIn. So just find me at Zoltan Mesko. I don't think there's many of me around with the same first and last name, but reach out. I'll be pretty responsive. That's kind of my social media platform these days that I'll respond to. Otherwise, I'm just a lurker on like Twitter. I think I've don't really contribute too much these days.
Amazing. All right. Well, LinkedIn it is. Thank you so much for joining us today. And for those who have enjoyed this conversation, feel free to tune in to learn a little bit more about the modern mind next time. And if you or somebody you know has a particularly interesting mental fitness story or things they do to practice mental fitness, we would love to hear from you. And you can find me on LinkedIn too. So have a good one. And thank you for your time and mind.